Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're looking for recommendations on one manhwa to read, then here are some that I've read recently that might be of interest. Manhwa titles are timestamped in the video for your convenience. Our first manhwa for today is Price of Violence, a modern manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 78 on. Its main character is Ye Si-ho, a very talented individual in one particular field, Kendo. Usually regarded as a recreational sport, Ye Si-ho proved to be quite the force in the world of Kendo and even became the world champion. For personal reasons, he chose to lay down the sword and try to live a normal and content life. Fate, though, would have other plans for him as one day he receives information that notes his sister's passing, seemingly by her own hands. Ever the outward stoic yet inwardly emotional individual, Si-ho travels to Seoul to take care of his sister's belongings. This is when he realized that foul play was involved, and thus a journey filled with revenge starts. Be prepared for a lot of violence, gore, and brutal combat to ensue. No price is high enough to pay for Ye Si-ho's revenge. The story is 8 out of 10. The plot itself is simple, but the surrounding environment and circumstances just always get in the way. Overall, I'm okay with it, but I find that it's getting a little bit tiresome in how much they're trying to evade the actual conflict between the quote-unquote boss and Si-ho, to put it simply. The characters are also 8 out of 10. While Si-ho, like I said, is the stoic yet emotional individual, we get to see more of the interwoven nature of the underground scene in his world along with the various players involved. Without spoiling too much more though, a lot of blood is spilled to get Si-ho where he wants to be. The art is 10 out of 10. For the first manhwa to get the gore category from me, this manhwa really had to lay it on thick. It doesn't hold any punches back and is just absolutely brutal in some of its portrayal in its scenes and combat encounters that Si-ho goes through. Even some of the side fights are just as good too. So if you're a fan of modern action manhwas where the art very much takes center stage as the main character seeks revenge, then The Price of Violence would be a manhwa worth picking up. This next manhwa to take a look at is The Genius Swordsman of Manhwa, a more manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 36 on. The protagonist of this title is Dokko-hon. Renowned as the most powerful unorthodox swordsman, he, alongside other unorthodox people, formed an alliance with orthodox forces to face the evil sect after a brutal event that cost many lives was performed by them. As they journey to face these forces, Hon and a manhwa swordsman by the name of Hyunjo end up becoming sworn brothers and get along really well. After a sudden attack by the evil sect though, both Hyunjo and Dokko-hon perish at the hands of a powerful figure. Waking up though, Han realizes that he has reincarnated or possessed Mu-hui, the eldest disciple of Hyunjo. Recalling his promise with Hyunjo to take care of the manhwa sect if he ever passed, Dokko-hon, now as Mu-hui, wants to cherish this promise. Now, he looks to prepare the next generation, alongside himself of course. The story is 7 out of 10. Reincarnation or possession of another person in the moral world very much sounds like Chunhwa's Archives Young Master or Heavenly Grand Archives Young Master as I titled in my previous videos, but clearly wasn't part of any ritual or sorcery in this particular case. Fate clearly wanted Dokko-hon to get to the bottom of Hyunjo and his mysterious deaths and keep his promise to help the manhwa sect. The characters are 9 out of 10. Now as Mu-hui, Han will have to navigate the current politics of the sect, cement his position within it, and slowly transform it from the inside out as a lot of their forces were depleted from the efforts to battle the evil sect. In addition, with the fellow disciples that Hui has with him, it will be some fun for him to train them. The art is 7 out of 10. This manhwa so far has not had that much time to show its potential just yet, at least compared to other more manhwas that I've covered on this channel. If it's anything close to some of the more sect-focused manhwas that I've covered, then it hopefully becomes a treat. So if you're a fan of Mura manhwas, particularly those of a sect-focused nature similar to Return of the Blossoming Blade from my previous videos, then The Genius Swordsman of Manhwa would definitely catch your interest. Get Some Honey by Copying Skills is the name of our next manhwa to take a look at. It's a regression manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 36 on. Choi Jin-hyuk is the name of its main character. Living in the typical modern fantasy world where gates, monsters, and dungeons exist, Jin-hyuk is actually a regressor. Immediately shown to us though is Jin-hyuk encountering Park Kang-ho, a dimensional returner with a particular perk. Due to the extraneous circumstances involved, Kang-ho decides to transfer his powers to Jin-hyuk, and his powers are that of a system that's able to copy other awakened abilities, but only on one condition. Jin-hyuk needs to find Park Kang-ho's family and take care of them. Jin-hyuk, of course, says yes and starts his journey to understand these new powers and actually make something of his life, albeit a little selfishly at first. The story is 7 out of 10. Regressing to try and get the most opportunity in a modern fantasy apocalypse world is not the most unique take, but at least Jin-hyuk has an ability that doesn't show up too often, which is copying others. Really, the only other manhwa that I remember even having somewhat of a similar ability is from the I'm the Max Level Newbie manhwa that I've covered on this channel. The characters are 7 out of 10. The initial impression of Jin-hyuk is actually quite self-centered and selfish. He gets a little consumed by the power that was initially displayed by Park Kang-ho, and Jin-hyuk's focus to survive takes any precedent before even remotely looking for Kang-ho's family. I hope this takes some more focus in the future, but for now that's all that we have in the 36 chapters. The art is 5 out of 10. Whilst the story and characters are fine on their own, I was actually a little averse initially to reading this one due to its art and overall presentation in the beginning. It just seems a little rough all around. I hope it does continue to improve though as time goes on. So if you're a fan of modern fantasy manhwas that have the typical dungeon gate monster settings and don't mind a little rough art, at least in my opinion, then maybe Get Some Honey by copying skills could be interesting to pick up. The shorter story I have for you this week is What a Bountiful Harvest Demon Lord, a reincarnation manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 24 on. The focus of this story is on Kim Jang-chol, an individual who's played and beat a particular game 19 times. His goal was to actually beat it 20 times, and as he booted up the game to actually start his 20th playthrough with an overpowered max level character, he ends up reincarnating into the game but as the Demon Lord Kratos. Huh? As any reincarnation into a villain, Jang-chol, now as Kratos, has to navigate this weird and tense situation he finds himself in. To make it even worse, his max level character is living in the same world and has the power to completely eliminate him, as he of course is the final boss. Will Kratos be able to survive in this new yet familiar game world? Clearly, he has to first deal with the food issue he has of his realm. The potential is 8 out of 10. Having to ensure your own personal survival by navigating the politics of his kingdom and trying to not aggravate your own max level character is already an amusing status quo to uphold. But the addition of then having to figure out how to feed said population at the same time just adds that little bit of spice and stress to Kratos. The art is 9 out of 10. For fans of the Greatest Estate developer, you will clearly see the influences of that title on this particular work as well. It even has cameos of those characters, specifically Habia and Lloyd of course in more comedic ways. Even the ways it portrays facial expressions is done in a very similar fashion. So if you're a fan of reincarnation manhwas where the main character becomes the villain in a game, and enjoy the art style and comedic aspects of the Greatest Estate developer from my previous videos, then keep an eye on What a Bountiful Harvest Demon Lord. Another week, another highlight. For those unaware, this is a section of the video I update impressions for manhwa that I've previously covered. Today's highlight is All Strength Sorcerer, which was previously called Mightiest Melee Magician in my previous videos. It's a manhwa that I've currently read at the chapter 76 now. Infocard description will have links to my original opinion. Lewin Ardell, our resident melee magician, has continued his adventure as Draka's avatar or inheritor. Since Lewin's transformation back into the limelight, there have been both positive and negative reactions to him. Of course, there are those that berated him initially and just can't believe he's rising once again, but there are also enemies that are just jealous of Lewin's potential as he gets stronger and stronger. At least, on the other side, there are others that respect his comeuppance and look to support or at least befriend him, like those of the Protector Orc and the Orc tribes that he trained with, which allowed him to acquire artifacts that further strengthened his combat prowess. He's going to need a lot though, as the consequences of his actions, even though he didn't really know about it until it's a little bit too late, are just about to face him directly. My previous scores for this manhwa were 7 out of 10 for art and 6 out of 10 for story and characters. The art stays the same at 7 out of 10 as it's kept the majority of its identity as a martial arts based combat and continued it overall. We've seen more of Lewin's capabilities, of course, but not anything that would cause my score to change in particular. The characters, though, go up 1 point from 6 out of 10 to 7 out of 10, as there have been some additions character-wise that have raised my enjoyment of the manhwa a bit. Both an actual villain, albeit a little forced, and some people on Lewin's side for once are good developments to have. In the same vein, the story also goes up 1 point to 7 out of 10 as well. The plot has actually moved forward a bit and found something to latch onto. Draka as a figure and a master to Lewin is finally showing some more presence or information as the manhwa continues its journey. All-Strength Sorcerer is an interesting title to adopt, but it does continue to be a good manhwa for those that enjoy a good fantasy action title where magic is used in a melee form, like the fist-fighting genius mage from my previous videos. Would you agree, or would you not? Comment down below your thoughts of All-Strength Sorcerer. And that wraps up this week's episode. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and write down in the comment section down below what manhwa you've been reading and I might just take a look. Till next time though, have a good read.